A millionaire CEO fell for his poor black cleaning lady, and no one expected what happened next. Nicholas Hayes was feared in boardrooms, admired in the city, and untouchable in his glass empire. But all it took was one small gesture from a woman no one noticed to bring him to his knees. Late one night, Maya Brooks, exhausted from scrubbing floors, noticed something glinting under the CEO's desk, a small locket he had dropped. She didn't know it was the only thing Nicholas had left from his late mother. She simply cleaned it with her rag and set it gently on his desk before leaving. Nicholas walked in moments later, and froze. For the first time in years, someone had touched his heart not with power or money, but with kindness. And it all began with her. Family, before we begin, I pray the same way love found Maya in this story, something good will also find you this week. Please subscribe, like, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support keeps us bringing you stories like this every day. The skyscraper loomed like a glass giant against the midnight sky, its windows glowing faintly while the rest of the city seemed to sleep. For most, Hayes Global was a fortress of wealth and power. For Maya Brooks, it was a workplace, though not one that gave her dignity, just enough to survive another month. Her shoes tapped softly as she entered through the side entrance. She was late into her night shift, the only hour she felt belonged to her. The marble hall stretched out, silent and gleaming, and the only sounds were the squeak of her cartwheels and the swish of her mop. In these hours, Maya was a ghost. She liked it that way. The wealthy never saw her, never acknowledged her, but at night she had the run of their pristine kingdom. Tonight was no different, or so she thought. She tied her uniform tighter around her waist, her tired fingers rubbing against the fabric. It smelled faintly of soap and bleach, like everything in her life. Cleaning had become her rhythm. Bend, scrub, sweep, repeat. She carried more weight than she let on, rent overdue, her younger brother's college fees looming, bills that piled like mountains. And yet, here she was, pushing through exhaustion because quitting wasn't an option. High above, on the top floor, Nicholas Hayes moved like a man haunted. The millionaire CEO, ruthless, admired, untouchable, often stayed in his penthouse office until midnight or later. Tonight, his suit jacket lay abandoned on the back of a chair, a glass of scotch untouched at the corner of his desk. The city lights spilled across his office like gold, yet he felt none of it belonged to him. Nicholas had won every battle he'd fought, in boardrooms, in courtrooms, across oceans of contracts, but victory had become his prison. He built an empire, but at the cost of something far greater. The hollow quiet of the office mocked him. For once, the master of the skyline felt smaller than his reflection in the glass. Restless, he stepped out into the hallway to take a call. His voice, low and clipped, echoed briefly before the door swung shut. Inside, the office waited in silence. That was when Maya arrived. She wasn't supposed to be on this floor yet, but the higher she climbed, the fewer distractions she had. And tonight, she wanted to be alone with her thoughts. The room was vast. The air smelled faintly of leather and cologne. She felt out of place stepping into Nicholas Hayes's office, her cleaning bucket rattling against the marble floor. She worked quickly, head bowed, careful not to touch more than necessary. As she bent near the CEO's leather chair, something caught her eye. A faint glint under the desk. Curious, she crouched and reached. Her fingers brushed dust before curling around a small object, delicate, golden, warm from the light. It was a locket. Old, worn, fragile, but beautiful in a way that made her pause. Her instinct could have been to ignore it, or worse, pocket it. No one would know. But that wasn't her way. She lifted the locket to her rag, gently polishing it until it shone again. Then with care, she placed it squarely at the center of his desk before slipping out quietly. To her, it was nothing. Just a lost trinket, now returned. Minutes later, the door opened. Nicholas stepped back in, tension still lining his jaw from the call, until his eyes fell on the desk. He froze. The locket. His mother's locket. The only thing of her he had left. He remembered it slipping from his hand earlier, the sinking dread that he'd lost it for good. 4 years he had carried it, a reminder of a woman who believed in him before anyone else had. And now, here it was, gleaming as though someone had restored it to life. His chest tightened. Who had touched it? Nicholas turned, scanning the room. But it was empty. Silent, save for the faint trace of cleaning supplies lingering in the air. His eyes narrowed. Whoever had done this hadn't taken it. They hadn't thrown it away. They had cared. For the first time in years, Nicholas Hayes, the man feared across the city, felt his walls crack. His hand closed around the locket, trembling. Who was she? Nicholas stared at the door, the question gnawing at him. Whoever had left the locket wasn't just an employee. She had just touched the heart he thought was buried forever. And he would find out who she was. Nicholas couldn't let it go. That locket had been on his desk polished, cared for, and someone had placed it there with quiet reverence. The thought burned in his chest. He had to know who. The next night, long after most lights in the city had gone dark, he stayed in his office again. This time, he didn't pace or bury himself in contracts. He listened. The faint squeak of wheels. The soft rhythm of a mop. When the door creaked open, he saw her. A young black woman in a faded uniform, her hair tied back, moving like she carried the weight of the world but refused to drop it. She didn't see him at first. She worked quickly, her hands steady, her eyes focused on the floor. Something about her dignity in such a thankless job rooted him where he stood. She wasn't stealing glances at his wealth, wasn't distracted. She was simply working, and doing it with a quiet grace he hadn't seen in years. Finally, she noticed him. Their eyes locked. For a second, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Nicholas Hayes, the man no one dared approach, and Maya Brooks, the woman no one ever noticed. Her gaze flickered, wary but unflinching. His chest tightened. Nicholas broke the silence, his voice lower than he intended. "You found something of mine." Her brows knitted in confusion until she realized. "The locket?" she asked softly. He nodded, his throat dry. "I just thought it mattered to someone," she said, and returned to scrubbing the floor. Simple. Honest. No angle. No expectation. Nicholas stood there, stunned. The gesture, her words, the way she said it as though kindness was ordinary, it gripped him harder than any hostile takeover ever had. He should have walked away. But instead, he found himself staying, watching her. Nicholas whispered to himself as she left the office, "I need to know her name." Nicholas Hayes was not the kind of man who fixated on anything. He conquered, he acquired, he moved on. That was the rhythm of his life, relentless efficiency, victories stacked higher than the skyline itself. And yet for 2 nights now, his thoughts had been consumed by something that made no sense to him at all. A locket. Not the locket itself. He had always cherished it, yes, but it wasn't the object that haunted him now. It was the knowledge that someone had found it, cleaned it, and placed it back with such care that he could feel the intent behind it. No one in his world did anything without motive. Deals were struck, favors exchanged, debts tallied. But this? This had been done in silence, without expectation. Who was she? The question gnawed at him, sharp as a blade. The air of the office felt different, like a secret was hidden somewhere between these walls, taunting him. Nicholas Hayes did not tolerate mysteries, not in business, not in life. And yet here he was, restless, unsettled, unable to shake the quiet gesture of a stranger. So he waited. That second night, Nicholas stayed late not to review contracts or strategize acquisitions, but to listen. He dismissed his driver, sent his assistants home, left the scotch untouched on the corner of his desk. He dimmed the lights, let the tower settle into silence, and leaned back in his chair with his hand still clutching the locket. He would know her. He had to. The hours crept by until he heard it, faint at first, then clearer. The squeak of wheels. The soft swish of a mop across marble. The rhythm was steady, patient, almost soothing. And then the door opened. She stepped inside with her cleaning cart, shoulders squared against the weight of exhaustion. Nicholas's eyes sharpened. It was her. He didn't know how he knew, but he was certain. Something about the way she moved, the quiet diligence in every stroke of her mop, told him. She wasn't performing, wasn't cutting corners, wasn't even aware she was being watched. This was her rhythm, her truth. She didn't notice him right away. He sat in shadow, half hidden by the city lights streaming through the glass walls. He studied her, the curve of her jaw, the tired set of her shoulders, the determination in her movements. She looked too young to carry so much weariness. Yet there was a quiet grace to her, as if even in struggle she refused to break. Finally, her eyes lifted. She froze, startled, then straightened slowly. Their gazes met. Nicholas felt something strange in his chest, a tightening he hadn't known in years. Her eyes were deep, steady, unflinching even as her hand tightened on the mop handle. "Mr. Hayes," she said softly, recognition flickering across her face. The sound of his name on her lips startled him. He didn't like people addressing him directly unless it was with reverence or fear. But from her, it was different. There was no awe, no groveling, just simple acknowledgement. "You found something of mine." His voice was lower than he intended, rough around the edges. Her brow furrowed for a moment before realization crossed her features. "The locket?" she asked. Nicholas's fingers curled instinctively around it in his palm. He nodded once. "I just thought it mattered to someone," she replied. Her tone was quiet, almost dismissive, as though what she had done was nothing at all. She dipped the mop back into the bucket, wrung it out, and bent again to her work. Nicholas stood, unsettled. That was it? No attempt to use it, no angling for favor, no hidden agenda? Just kindness? He watched her, his mind running faster than his pulse. She wasn't pretending not to notice him, nor was she seeking attention. She worked steadily, her presence unassuming but undeniable. Why? The question escaped him before he could stop it. She glanced up. Why what? Why bother? He gestured to the desk where the locket had been. You could have ignored it. Or taken it. For a beat, she simply studied him. Then she shrugged lightly. It wasn't mine. And it looked like it mattered. That's all. That's all. 2 words, simple and devastating. Nicholas felt a wave of something he couldn't name. In his world, nothing was ever that's all. Every move was calculated, every gesture costed. But she, this poor cleaning lady, had given him back something priceless and dismissed it as if it were ordinary. He swallowed hard, the taste of scotch he hadn't drunk burning in his throat. What's your name? Her eyes lingered on him for a moment, wary, then she answered. Maya. Maya Brooks. The name settled in his chest like a stone dropped into water, rippling outward. He wanted to say it again, to test how it felt against his tongue, but he bit it back. Maya, he repeated quietly. Thank you. She gave him a small nod, her expression unreadable, then turned back to her work. Nicholas didn't move. He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching as she mopped his floor like she belonged more to this space than he did. Her silence unnerved him, her presence shook him, and when she finally finished and pushed her cart toward the door, he felt an absurd tug in his chest. "Maya," he said again, and she paused in the doorway. "Yes." The word balanced delicately between them. He wanted to say something, anything, to keep her there. But the words lodged in his throat. So he only nodded once more, and she slipped out of sight. Nicholas Hayes, master of empires, conqueror of boardrooms, stood in his office that night unsettled by a woman with a mop. He leaned against his desk, the locket heavy in his palm. His mind replayed every detail, the calm in her eyes, the steadiness of her voice, the way she said that's all like kindness was the simplest thing in the world. Who was she, really? Nicholas found himself restless in the days that followed. Meetings dragged, conversations blurred, contracts lost their urgency. He caught himself staring at the locket during board discussions, his mind drifting back to that quiet figure in a uniform. He shouldn't care. She was just a cleaning lady. But the more he tried to dismiss it, the sharper the memory became. By the third night, Nicholas did something he had never done before. He lingered deliberately in his office, waiting for the sound of her cart, the rhythm of her mop. And when it came, he felt his chest tighten in anticipation. Family, before the story continues, may something good and unexpected find you this week, just as kindness found Nicholas in his darkest hour. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring you these powerful stories every day. When Maya entered again, Nicholas didn't hide in shadow. He stood by the window, his back to her, watching the city. But every nerve in him was tuned to her presence. He could hear her soft footsteps, smell the faint scent of lemon cleaner and soap, feel the gravity she carried into the room. "Mr. Hayes," she said, as if greeting a neighbor, not a man who owned half the skyline. He turned slowly. Their eyes met again, and this time Nicholas didn't look away. "You work late," he said. "You too." Her lips quirked just faintly, not quite a smile, more a statement of fact. It disarmed him. He crossed to his desk, leaned against it, studying her. "Do you always treat things like they matter?" Maya paused, her hands tightening on the mop handle. "Doesn't everyone?" "No," he said flatly. "Most people don't." She tilted her head, her gaze steady. "Maybe you're looking at the wrong people." The silence stretched between them, heavy with something unspoken. Nicholas's pulse thudded in his ears. He, who commanded entire boardrooms with a glance, suddenly felt unsure of his footing. And then Maya turned back to her work, leaving him standing there in the quiet storm she had created inside him. That night, long after she left, Nicholas remained by his desk, staring at the city. He had faced rivals, defeated enemies, built an empire from dust. But nothing had shaken him the way a poor cleaning lady's honesty had. He pressed the locket to his palm, his breath rough. This wasn't over. Nicholas Hayes was a man who never let his emotions dictate his decisions. His empire had been built on discipline, precision, and control, three things he held sacred. So why did a simple cleaning lady's presence feel like a crack running straight through the foundation of everything he stood on? He told himself it was nothing, an anomaly, a flicker of weakness. He would stamp it out. The morning after their second encounter, Nicholas arrived at the office earlier than usual, determined to drown himself in work. His assistant, Daniel, walked briskly beside him, rattling off schedules and reports. Nicholas nodded at all the right times, but his mind was elsewhere. He caught himself staring at the faint smudge on the polished glass wall, the place where Maya's mop had passed just hours earlier. Ridiculous. "Cancel the evening meetings," Nicholas snapped suddenly. Daniel blinked. "Sir?" You have. Cancel them, Nicholas repeated, his tone sharp enough to cut. Push them to tomorrow. Daniel hesitated but nodded. Of course. Nicholas shut himself in his office, pacing like a caged animal. He pulled the locket from his pocket and dropped it onto the desk. It glinted in the morning light, mocking him with its simplicity. He clenched his jaw. This isn't about her. It can't be. He tried to focus on contracts, on projections, on mergers worth billions, but his eyes kept drifting back to the door, half expecting it to open and reveal her. That night, Nicholas left early, determined not to see her. He told himself it was for the best. He didn't need distractions. But as he sat in his penthouse, the city sprawling beneath him, the silence felt unbearable. He poured himself a glass of scotch, but it tasted like ash. He turned on the television, but the noise grated on his nerves. His thoughts drifted back, unbidden. The steadiness of her voice. The simplicity of her words. The way she had looked at him, not with fear, not with greed, but with something far rarer. Genuine humanity. Nicholas slammed the glass onto the counter, the sound echoing through the empty room. He hated this. Hated the pull she had over him. He had fought his way out of poverty with blood and steel, had clawed his way into the world of power. And now here he was, undone by a woman who mopped his floors. It was unacceptable. The next day, Nicholas buried himself in meetings, surrounding himself with people who reminded him of who he was, a predator among businessmen, the untouchable master of the game. But even then, she haunted him. During a presentation, he noticed an intern fumble with a folder, papers scattering across the table. The others rolled their eyes, impatient, dismissive. But Nicholas remembered Maya's steady hands placing the locket on his desk. His chest tightened unexpectedly, and he had to look away. Later at lunch, his colleagues joked about the help, mocking the very people who kept their skyscrapers spotless. Normally, Nicholas would have ignored it, too detached to care. But this time, the words grated, and he found himself snapping. Without them, this building would collapse into filth. Show some respect. The table fell silent, stunned. Nicholas returned to his meal, his expression icy, but inside he was seething. Why did he care? That evening, against his better judgment, Nicholas lingered in his office again. He told himself he was waiting for an important call, but he knew the truth. When Maya entered, her cart rattling softly, he didn't pretend to be busy. He watched her openly, his eyes tracing the familiar rhythm of her work. She glanced at him, her brow lifting slightly. "Didn't you leave early yesterday?" Nicholas's lips curved faintly. "And you noticed?" Her eyes flickered, caught between amusement and caution. "Hard not to. You're usually here when I come through." He tilted his head, studying her. "Does that bother you?" Maya's gaze held his. "No. But I can't imagine why a man like you spends so much time here. Don't you have a life outside this office?" Her words landed like a punch. Nicholas chuckled dryly, but the sound was hollow. "This is my life." "That's sad," she said simply. The bluntness disarmed him. No one dared speak to Nicholas Hayes that way. And yet, hearing it from her felt less like an insult and more like a truth he had been avoiding. He leaned forward, unable to resist. "And what about you, Maya Brooks? Is this your life? Scrubbing offices while the city sleeps?" Her eyes softened, though her chin lifted with quiet pride. "It's honest work. It pays the bills. And it doesn't make me forget who I am." The words struck deeper than she could know. Nicholas swallowed hard, gripping the edge of his desk to steady himself. That night, after she left, Nicholas sat alone with the weight of her words pressing down on him. He tried to dismiss it, to dismiss her. But the harder he pushed, the more she lingered in his mind. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. The following week, Nicholas made a decision. He would put an end to this distraction once and for all. He would stop waiting for her, stop lingering in shadows, stop letting her presence shake him. But fate had other plans. 2 nights later, Nicholas arrived late, determined to sign off on documents and leave before she came. But as he strode into his office, he found her already there. Maya was standing by his desk, carefully stacking loose papers. She hadn't noticed him yet. The sight of her there, framed by the city lights, felt almost surreal. For a moment, he simply watched, torn between irritation and something dangerously close to longing. Then his voice cut through the silence. "Comfortable in my office, are we?" She startled, spinning to face him, her cheeks flushing. "I was just cleaning," he finished, his tone sharp. "Yes, I'm aware." Her jaw tightened. "If it bothers you, I can skip this floor." The words hit him harder than expected. He didn't want her to skip his floor. He didn't want her gone. "No," he said quickly, then forced his tone calmer. "No. Do your work." Their eyes locked in the heavy silence that followed. Nicholas could feel the tension thrumming like a wire, every instinct in him at war. He should walk away. He should end this before it grew into something dangerous. And yet, he didn't move. "Family, let me pause right here to ask you, do you believe fate has a way of pulling people together no matter how hard they resist? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this powerful story. Nicholas stayed late that night, longer than usual. He told himself it was coincidence. But deep down he knew the battle was already lost. No matter how hard he resisted, Maya Brooks had already slipped past his defenses. And Nicholas Hayes, the man who controlled everything, was beginning to realize he was powerless against her. Nicholas Hayes didn't believe in fate. He believed in strategy, in numbers, in the cold certainty of calculated moves. But when the universe wanted to mock him, it didn't whisper, it roared. And on that Friday night, it roared in the form of a broken elevator. The building was nearly empty. Rain lashed against the glass walls, thunder rumbling in the distance. Maya pushed her cleaning cart into the private elevator reserved for the top floors, humming softly to herself. She hated storms. Too many memories of blackouts and nights huddled with candles when she was little. But work was work, and bills didn't pay themselves. The elevator shuddered once, then stopped. Maya frowned, pressing the button again. Nothing. She tried the emergency call, static. Her chest tightened. Trapped. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath. She'd been through worse. She could handle this. Then the doors slid open, half an inch, just enough for a hand to wedge in and force them wider. Nicholas Hayes stepped inside. His expression was thunder itself. "Of course," he muttered under his breath. Maya blinked, startled. "You? What are you doing here?" His jaw tightened. "I could ask you the same." "The elevator broke before I could get to the lobby," she explained, bristling at his tone. He pressed the button again, as if his presence alone would make it obey. Nothing. The storm outside growled, the lights flickered, and suddenly the elevator jolted, then stilled. Trapped. Together. Nicholas exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. Perfect. Maya crossed her arms, her mop handle clattering softly against the cart. If you'd like me to disappear, I'm afraid I can't. We're both stuck here. His eyes flicked to hers, dark and intense. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of stalled machinery. Nicholas leaned against the wall, adjusting his tie as though control were still his to claim. Maya stayed standing, her cart between them like a shield. Minutes passed. The storm howled. The elevator didn't move. Finally, Maya sighed. You could at least try to look less miserable about it. Nicholas's gaze cut to her sharply. I don't do small talk. Then don't, she said evenly. But sulking won't make this box move. Something in her tone, calm, steady, unafraid, chipped at his armor. He was used to people scrambling to fill silence around him, eager to impress or afraid to displease. But Maya? She simply was. It unsettled him more than the broken elevator. The minutes stretched into an hour. The air grew warm, heavy with the scent of lemon cleaner and rain-soaked stone. Nicholas shifted restlessly, unused to confinement, while Maya sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands folded loosely in her lap. He watched her out of the corner of his eye. She was tired. He could see it in the way her shoulders sagged, in the faint shadows under her eyes. Yet she carried herself with a kind of quiet dignity that made the cramped space feel less suffocating. Do you always work this late? He asked suddenly, surprising himself. Maya tilted her head, studying him. Do you? Nicholas's lips twitched. Touché. She shrugged lightly. I take extra shifts when I can. My little brother's in school. Books, uniforms, fees, it adds up. Nicholas stilled. A little brother. He hadn't expected that. How old? He asked before he could stop himself. 16. Smart. Too smart for the life we've had. I want him to have more. Her voice softened with fierce determination. Nicholas felt a flicker of something in his chest, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Recognition. He too had once been a boy clawing for more than what life offered. And what about you? He asked, his voice quieter now. She blinked. What about me? What do you want? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Most people never asked her that. For a moment, she hesitated. Then softly, peace. Stability. Maybe a little joy that doesn't come with a price tag. Nicholas swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing into him. He glanced at the locket in his pocket, the ghost of his mother's smile flickering in his mind. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, alive, threaded with something neither of them dared name. Then the elevator jolted. Maya gasped, instinctively reaching out to steady herself, her hand landing against Nicholas's chest. His breath caught. Her palm was warm, her touch light, but it shot through him like electricity. His eyes locked on hers, and for one dangerous moment, the storm outside might as well have been inside the elevator. Maya pulled back quickly, flustered. Sorry. Nicholas's throat worked. Don't be. The words slipped out before he could stop them. The air grew heavier, thicker, charged with the storm and something far more dangerous. The elevator finally whirred back to life, crawling slowly toward the lobby. But when the doors opened at last, neither of them moved right away. Maya gathered her cart, her composure steady once more, though her heartbeat betrayed her. Nicholas adjusted his tie, his face unreadable, but his hands tightened at his sides. As they stepped out, the storm still raging outside, Nicholas felt something shift inside him. He had tried to resist her, to bury the pull she had on him. But now, after being locked in that elevator, after hearing her speak of dreams and dignity, he knew the truth. He couldn't resist anymore. And for the first time in years, Nicholas Hayes, master of his empire, had no idea what came next. Family, let me ask you, do you believe moments of fate, like a broken elevator, happen for a reason? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing family for more emotional stories every day. Nicholas Hayes had always believed knowledge was power. In boardrooms, it was ammunition. In life, it was protection. And after that night trapped in the elevator, he realized he didn't just want to know Maya Brooks, he needed to. But unlike business partners and rivals, Maya wasn't someone he could research through files or financial statements. She wasn't a ledger to be audited. She was a mystery that demanded patience, honesty, and trust, three things Nicholas had almost forgotten how to give. The following evening he stayed again, though this time he didn't pretend it was for work. He wanted to see her. When Maya entered, her eyes flickered briefly with recognition, not surprise anymore, but something warier. "You again," she said, her lips curving faintly. Nicholas leaned back in his chair, his tie loosened. "What can I say? I enjoy the smell of disinfectant." Her laugh, soft, reluctant, startled him. He had expected silence, perhaps even annoyance, but the sound lodged itself deep in his chest. "You don't strike me as someone who jokes much," Maya said, resuming her work. "I don't," Nicholas admitted. "You bring it out of me." Her hand stilled briefly on the mop handle. She didn't respond, but the flush in her cheeks told him she'd heard. Minutes passed in the rhythm of her work, the quiet hum of the city outside, the low crackle of rain. Finally, Nicholas spoke. "You said you take extra shifts for your brother. Where's your family?" Maya's movements slowed. Her shoulders tensed, and for the first time since he'd met her, her steady composure wavered. "They're gone," she said softly. "Car accident. I was 18. David was 12. Nicholas felt the words hit like a blow. He studied her profile, the calm mask she wore, the strength it must have taken to survive that kind of loss. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, the words foreign on his tongue. He rarely apologized, rarely expressed sympathy. But with her, it came naturally. Maya glanced at him, her eyes guarded but not unkind. "It was a long time ago. I had to grow up fast. Someone had to take care of David." Nicholas leaned forward slightly. "And who took care of you?" Her lips pressed together. For a moment, her silence was louder than any words. Then softly, "No one." The honesty in her voice cut through him like glass. Nicholas's throat tightened. He knew that feeling all too well, being alone when the world should have held you. He thought of his mother, of the years after her passing, of the cold hunger that had driven him to climb higher and higher, hoping the view from the top would fill the emptiness inside. It hadn't. And now here was Maya, carrying her own scars with quiet dignity, reminding him of truths he had buried long ago. Nicholas stood, crossing to the window. The city glittered below, all steel and power, but for once it looked hollow. "You remind me of someone," he said finally, his voice low. Maya looked up from her cart. "Who?" "My mother." The words caught in his throat, but he forced them out. "She worked herself to the bone to keep us afloat. She gave everything, and the world gave her nothing back. Except me." Maya's gaze softened. "She must have been proud of you." Nicholas let out a bitter laugh. "I doubt she'd recognize me now." Silence fell. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with truths neither of them had planned to share. Maya set the mop aside, surprising him. She leaned against her cart, her eyes steady on his. "Maybe she would," she said. Maybe she'd see a man who survived what should have broken him. Nicholas swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. He wasn't used to people seeing past the armor, past the empire. And he wasn't sure whether to resent her for it, or thank her. Their eyes held, the distance between them shrinking not in steps but in something deeper. Nicholas felt the weight of his walls crumbling brick by brick, undone by a woman who scrubbed his floors and spoke to him like a man instead of a myth. But just as the silence shifted into something dangerous, Nicholas's phone buzzed sharply on the desk. He glanced at the caller ID, Daniel. Business. Reality. The world he knew. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked back at Maya. You shouldn't have to carry all of this alone. Her lips curved faintly. And what would you suggest? That I let someone like you take care of me? The teasing lilt in her voice couldn't hide the truth beneath, distrust. She had built her own walls, too. Nicholas stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. Maybe. Or maybe just someone who understands what it feels like to be alone in a room full of people. Maya's breath caught. For a moment, her defenses faltered, and Nicholas felt the shift, small, fragile, but real. The night ended too soon. Maya gathered her things, her mask back in place, and left with a quiet good night. Nicholas stayed by the window, his reflection staring back at him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about mergers, or rivals, or the next acquisition. He was thinking about her, her laugh, her scars, her strength. And it terrified him. Family, let me ask you, do you believe people who carry pain recognize it in others, even when no words are spoken? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying this journey. Your support keeps us going. Nicholas Hayes had built an empire from nothing. But now, with Maya Brooks, he was realizing something he had never dared to before. He could lose everything and still feel like he had gained the world, as long as she was in it. And that truth was more dangerous than any rival he had ever faced. The days that followed the elevator incident and Maya's unveiled backstory left Nicholas Hayes restless in ways he couldn't explain. For years, he had measured his life in contracts signed, companies acquired, and rivals defeated. Yet now, his measure of time seemed to be the minutes he spent in her presence. Maya Brooks. Her name replayed in his mind like a song he couldn't silence. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. But deep down, he knew the truth. The woman who mopped his floors had done something no one else had managed in years. She'd made him feel human again. On a Tuesday night, Nicholas decided he wouldn't wait in shadows. When Maya arrived, she found him seated casually on the edge of his desk, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He didn't look like the ruthless CEO the city feared. He looked almost approachable. Maya hesitated, narrowing her eyes. "You're here again?" Nicholas's lips curved faintly. "Maybe I like clean floors." Her laugh, soft, incredulous, filled the room. "You? Liking clean floors? Somehow I doubt that." Nicholas leaned forward slightly. "Maybe I like the person who cleans them." Maya blinked, caught off guard. Her cheeks flushed, but she recovered quickly, shaking her head with mock exasperation. "You're impossible." "Not impossible," Nicholas murmured. "Just persistent." That night, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was easy, filled with small exchanges that carried more weight than Nicholas wanted to admit. She asked him, almost playfully, "So what do you do when you're not terrorizing boardrooms and glaring at people?" Nicholas smirked. "Contrary to popular belief, I don't spend all my time glaring. Sometimes I brood quietly." Maya laughed again, shaking her head. "That explains the permanent frown lines." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "Are you implying I'm old?" "Not old," Maya said with a teasing grin. "Just perpetually grumpy." For the first time in years, Nicholas found himself laughing, a real laugh, deep and unrestrained. It startled him almost as much as it startled her. They began to talk more freely after that. Maya told him about her brother, David, his obsession with computers, his dream of going to college. Nicholas found himself listening intently, more interested in her words than any report Daniel had ever placed on his desk. In return, he shared pieces of his own life, guarded at first, then more openly. Stories of his mother, of the nights she stayed up sewing clothes just to keep food on the table. He even confessed how he had once sold newspapers on a freezing corner, dreaming of skyscrapers he would someday own. Maya listened, her eyes soft, her expression free of judgment. For Nicholas, it was unnerving. People usually listened to him out of obligation, not interest. But with her, it felt different, like she truly wanted to know the man beneath the empire. One evening, as she packed up her cart, Nicholas surprised her. "Have dinner with me." Maya froze. "Dinner?" He nodded. "There's a restaurant downstairs. Quiet. Private. You won't even have to leave the building." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" Nicholas leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Because I want to. Because you've spent every night taking care of everyone else, and I think it's time someone took care of you." Maya hesitated, torn. She knew better than to mix worlds. He was a millionaire CEO. She was a cleaning lady struggling to pay bills. But something in his tone, the sincerity beneath the confidence, made her nod, almost against her own better judgment. "Fine. Just dinner." Nicholas smiled, small, rare, but genuine. Just dinner. The restaurant was nearly empty, candlelight flickering against glass walls. Maya sat stiffly at first, unused to the polished silverware and quiet luxury. Nicholas noticed and, instead of ignoring it, leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper. "Between us, I hate these places. The food looks like art, but it never fills you up." Maya snorted, covering her mouth to hide her laugh. "So why come here?" "Because appearances matter," Nicholas said. Then softer, "But tonight, I don't care about appearances." Maya's heart skipped. Over plates of delicate pasta and wine Nicholas barely touched, the two of them talked. Really talked. Maya told him how she once dreamed of being a teacher, before life pulled her onto a different path. Nicholas listened with a focus that unsettled her, like he was memorizing every word. "You still could," he said firmly. Maya shook her head. "Dreams don't pay the rent." Nicholas leaned closer. "Maybe not. But that doesn't mean you stop dreaming." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. As the night wound down, Nicholas walked her to the lobby. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed in silver light. Maya turned to him. "Thank you. For dinner." Nicholas hesitated, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out the locket, holding it between them. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "You returned it to me when you didn't have to. That means more than you know." Maya's eyes softened. "You don't owe me anything." Nicholas shook his head. "Maybe I don't. But I want to." Their eyes locked, the world narrowing to just the two of them. For a moment, Nicholas considered closing the distance, tasting the kiss that hovered unspoken between them. But instead, he stepped back, his self-control winning by a thread. "Good night, Maya." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good night." That night, Nicholas couldn't sleep. He replayed every word, every smile, every laugh. The sound of her voice lingered like a melody he didn't want to forget. For years, he had believed love was a distraction, a weakness he couldn't afford. But now, he wasn't so sure. Because when Maya Brooks looked at him, he didn't feel like a CEO. He didn't feel untouchable. He felt like a man. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Family, let me ask you, do you think love can grow in the most unexpected places, even between two people from completely different worlds? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heart-gripping tales every week. Nicholas Hayes had spent his life conquering the world. But now, sitting alone with his mother's locket and Maya's laugh echoing in his mind, he realized something profound. The greatest victory he might ever win was her. Nicholas Hayes had always known how fragile empires could be. One wrong move, one slip of control, and everything could collapse. He had seen it happen to rivals countless times. But he never imagined his own undoing wouldn't come from a hostile takeover or scandal. It would come from a woman with a mop and a steady gaze that cut straight through him. Maya Brooks. The fragile, unspoken bond they had built over nights of quiet laughter and confessions was growing stronger by the day. Nicholas felt it each time she looked at him without fear, each time her words brushed against the wounds he'd hidden for years. And that terrified him more than any boardroom war. Because Nicholas Hayes didn't know how to need someone. And needing her was starting to feel like breathing. The night it all began to unravel, Nicholas had just finished a brutal day of negotiations. He should have gone home. Instead he stayed, waiting as he always did now. When Maya arrived, her cart rattling softly into his office, Nicholas's shoulders eased without him realizing. "You again," she teased lightly. Nicholas smirked. "You say that as if you're surprised." "I'm not surprised anymore," she admitted, meeting his gaze with quiet warmth. Something in his chest tightened. He wanted to reach for her, to close the distance, to abandon caution. But before he could speak, the door swung open. Daniel, his assistant, strode in, holding a thick file. His eyes landed on Maya, then flicked to Nicholas, confusion flashing in his expression. "Sir, the Carter deal requires," he broke off, studying the scene. "Am I interrupting?" Maya stepped back quickly, her cheeks flushing. Nicholas's jaw hardened. "No," Nicholas said coldly. "Leave the file and go." Daniel hesitated, his gaze lingering on Maya with barely concealed disdain. He placed the file down slowly, then left, the door clicking shut behind him. Maya exhaled, clearly uncomfortable. "I should go." Nicholas's voice sharpened. "Don't." But the damage was done. The intrusion had cracked the fragile bubble they lived in each night. The next morning, whispers began. Nicholas heard them in the elevator, in the corridors, in the half-smiles of executives who thought he didn't notice. Words like cleaning lady and desperation floated on the air. By afternoon, an anonymous article had surfaced online. Untouchable CEO Hayes caught in late-night affair with janitorial staff. The words burned. Not because of the scandal, Nicholas could weather worse, but because of how they reduced her. Maya, with her quiet strength, her sacrifices, her dreams, reduced to a headline meant to humiliate. He stormed into his office, fists clenched, only to find Maya already there, the article open on her phone. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fury and shame. "Is this what I am to them?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Some story to laugh at?" Nicholas's chest tightened. "This isn't you. They don't know you." Her laugh was bitter. "But they know you. And now they'll drag me through the dirt just to get to you." Nicholas stepped forward, desperate. "I'll fix this." "How?" she shot back. "By telling the world I'm special? That you, Nicholas Hayes, the man who doesn't believe in weakness, decided to play savior to the poor cleaning lady." The words sliced through him. He tried to speak, but she turned away, her shoulders trembling. "I can't do this," she whispered. That night, Nicholas sat alone in his office, the city blazing beneath him. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. He had fought billion-dollar wars and won. But this battle for the woman he was falling for, he was losing without even knowing how to fight. He remembered the look in her eyes: betrayal, humiliation, pain. He wanted to burn the world to the ground for putting that look there. But the truth was, she wasn't angry at them. She was angry at him. For letting her get close. For not protecting her. For dragging her into his world without warning her of the cost. Days passed. Maya didn't come to his floor anymore. Nicholas waited each night, the silence heavier than any storm. When he finally saw her again, it was by chance. She was pushing her cart down the lobby, her expression drawn, her eyes avoiding his. "Maya," he said, his voice rough. She didn't stop. Nicholas stepped in front of her, forcing her to look at him. "Please, talk to me." Her eyes lifted at last, and the pain in them nearly broke him. "This was a mistake, Nicholas. Whatever this was, it can't be." His chest tightened. "Don't say that." "I have to," she whispered. "Because if I don't, I'll lose myself in you. And I can't afford to lose myself." She pushed past him, her cart rattling across the marble, leaving Nicholas standing frozen in the middle of the lobby. That night, Nicholas returned to his penthouse, the silence deafening. He poured a glass of scotch and didn't drink it. He stared at the locket in his palm, the only piece of his mother he had left, and felt the truth like a knife in his chest. He had thought he could resist her. He had thought he could control this. But now, at the moment he wanted her most, she was gone. And Nicholas Hayes, the man who had never been defeated, finally understood what it meant to lose. Family, let me ask you, do you think love is worth the risk, even when the world tries to tear it apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and please, if you're feeling this story, subscribe and join us. We'd love to have you in our family. Nicholas Hayes had built his life on victories. But with Maya Brooks, he had found something more fragile and far more dangerous than victory. He had found love. And he had just shattered it. The days after Maya walked away stretched like years. Nicholas Hayes had always been a creature of routine, board meetings, negotiations, late nights in his office. But now, the rhythm of his life had cracked. Without her steady presence, his nights felt longer, emptier, suffocating. He stayed late anyway, out of habit, staring at the empty door as though she might appear. She never did. Daniel noticed the change. "Sir, you haven't touched the Carter merger papers in 3 days." Nicholas waved him off, his gaze on the city lights. He couldn't explain it. Couldn't tell anyone. How could he admit that the man who built empires had been undone by losing someone who had nothing, except her dignity, her strength, and the quiet way she saw him as more than his empire? He wanted to go to her. But pride held him back. Pride and fear. Because what if she didn't forgive him? Maya was no less haunted. She avoided the top floors, rearranged her shifts, even considered quitting altogether. But she couldn't quit the memories. Nicholas's laugh, rare and disarming. The way he had looked at her in candlelight, as though she was more than the uniform she wore. The quiet sincerity in his voice when he had said, "I want to." But then came the article, the whispers, the humiliation. The reminder that in his world, she would always be reduced to the cleaning lady. Her brother David noticed her distraction. "Maya, what's wrong?" "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile. He frowned. "You always tell me to be honest. Why won't you?" She faltered, looking at him. He deserved better than half-truths. But how could she explain Nicholas Hayes? How could she explain how dangerous it felt to care for a man like him? A man whose world could crush her without meaning to. So she said nothing. And the silence gnawed at her. One night, Maya walked home in the rain, her uniform damp, her shoes soaked. She stopped at a corner bakery just before closing, buying a single roll for herself and David. The cashier glanced at her tired face with pity, and Maya's heart clenched. This is my world, she thought bitterly. Scraping by. Fighting for scraps. And Nicholas's world? Towers of glass, private dinners, luxury he couldn't even taste anymore. They didn't belong together. Yet when she lay in bed, listening to David's steady breathing, she couldn't stop remembering how Nicholas had looked at her, not with pity, not with disdain, but with something terrifyingly close to reverence. Meanwhile, Nicholas's pride began to crumble. He tried drowning himself in work, but the numbers blurred. He attended meetings, but the words bounced off him. At night, he returned to his penthouse, where the silence mocked him. Finally, one evening, he found himself in his car outside the small neighborhood where Maya lived. He sat there for nearly an hour, engine idling, unable to move. What would he say if he knocked on her door? "I'm sorry?" The words felt foreign. He hadn't apologized in years. "I miss you." Too raw, too desperate. "I need you." Terrifyingly true. In the end, he drove away. But the seed was planted. The breaking point came days later, during a charity gala. Nicholas stood in a room filled with glittering gowns and sharp suits, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing like knives. Normally, he thrived here, commanding attention, respected, feared. But tonight, the emptiness pressed down like a weight. He caught his reflection in a wall of glass. He saw the tailored suit, the confident stance, the mask of the ruthless CEO. But beneath it, he saw a man hollowed out, longing for someone who wasn't there. For a cleaning lady who made him laugh like a boy again. Nicholas left the gala without a word. That same night, Maya sat at her kitchen table, sorting bills. David looked up from his homework. "You're not happy," he said simply. Maya blinked. "What?" "You used to smile more," David said, watching her carefully. "Something happened. Was it about that man?" Maya's chest tightened. Her brother was sharper than most gave him credit for. "David. He hurt you, didn't he?" She swallowed hard. "Not exactly. It's complicated." David leaned forward. "Then maybe it's not about whether he hurt you. Maybe it's about whether he makes you happier than you've been in a long time." Maya stared at him, her throat tight. Out of the mouths of children came truths adults feared to admit. That night, both Nicholas and Maya lay awake in different corners of the city, staring at ceilings, haunted by the same truth. They couldn't walk away. The next evening, Nicholas finally gave in. He left his office early, clutching the locket in his hand like a talisman. His driver hesitated when Nicholas gave the address, but Nicholas's glare silenced any questions. When he arrived, rain threatened again, the clouds heavy above the small apartment building. He stood at the door, his chest pounding like he was facing his fiercest rival. He knocked. Maya opened it, her eyes widening in shock. "Nicholas." For a moment, neither spoke. The tension hung heavy, the storm outside echoing the one between them. "I shouldn't be here," Nicholas admitted, his voice rough. "But I can't stay away." Maya's grip tightened on the door. "You don't belong here." "I don't belong anywhere without you," he said simply. Her breath caught. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away every shield she had. "You hurt me," she whispered. "I know." His eyes burned with sincerity. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never do it again, if you'll let me." Maya's heart raced. Every instinct told her this was dangerous, that his world would crush hers. But her soul told her this was the moment fate demanded a choice. She stepped aside slowly, opening the door wider. "Come in." "Family, let me ask you, do you believe love is worth fighting for, even when the odds are stacked against you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Join our family for more stories like this that touch the heart. Nicholas Hayes had faced countless battles. But standing in Maya Brooks's doorway, drenched from the storm, he knew this was the only battle that mattered. And this time, he wasn't walking away. The rain tapped against Maya's apartment windows as Nicholas stepped inside. The space was modest, small kitchen, second-hand furniture, worn but tidy. It smelled faintly of soap and fresh bread. It was nothing like the cavernous penthouse he lived in. And yet, standing there, Nicholas felt more grounded than he had in years. Maya closed the door behind him, crossing her arms. Her gaze was steady, but her voice trembled slightly. "Why are you really here, Nicholas?" He met her eyes without hesitation. "Because I've been a fool. Because I let pride and fear get in the way. Because when you walked away, I realized the empire I've built means nothing if I don't have someone to share it with." Maya shook her head, torn between disbelief and something dangerously close to hope. "You don't understand. This, us, it's not possible. We come from different worlds. You'll wake up one morning and regret ever stepping into mine." Nicholas took a step closer, his voice low but fierce. "The only regret I have is not stepping into your world sooner." Her breath caught. He pulled the locket from his pocket, holding it out between them. "You gave this back to me when you didn't have to. That one small act reminded me what it feels like to be seen, to be cared for without expectation. I don't want to lose the person who taught me that again." Maya's throat tightened. The sincerity in his voice, the way his hand trembled slightly, it broke down the last of her defenses. But still, fear lingered. "And what happens when the world finds out? When they drag my name through the mud again? I can't survive being your scandal, Nicholas." Nicholas's eyes burned with determination. "Then let them try. I'll burn every headline, silence every whisper, fight every battle. But I won't fight you. Not anymore." The storm outside rumbled as silence filled the room. Maya looked at him, searching for cracks, for insincerity. But all she found was truth. And slowly, the walls she'd built crumbled. They stood inches apart, neither daring to move. Then, finally, Nicholas reached for her hand. His touch was tentative, almost reverent. "Maya," he whispered, "give me another chance." Her eyes shimmered with tears. For years, she had been strong for everyone else. For David. For herself. But for the first time, she let herself be vulnerable. She nodded. Yes. The first kiss wasn't fiery or rushed. It was gentle, trembling, like two people rediscovering the language of hope. Nicholas's hands cradled her face, as though she was the most fragile and precious thing he had ever held. Maya melted into him, her heart pounding, the storm outside drowned out by the storm within. When they pulled apart, Nicholas rested his forehead against hers, his breath unsteady. "You've undone me," he admitted. Maya's lips curved faintly. "Maybe you needed undoing." The days that followed were not easy. The whispers didn't vanish overnight. Daniel confronted Nicholas, warning him of reputational risks. The press sniffed around, hungry for a scandal. But Nicholas met it all with an iron will he had never used for anything but business. For once, he wasn't fighting for profit. He was fighting for her. And Maya, though still wary, began to see the truth in his actions. He wasn't just a millionaire CEO who had noticed her for a moment. He was a man willing to step out of his empire to stand beside her in the storm. One evening, Nicholas invited Maya and David to his penthouse for dinner. The boy was wide-eyed, staring at the glittering city below, but Nicholas treated him not as an inconvenience but as an equal, asking about his dreams. "You like computers?" Nicholas asked. David nodded eagerly. "I want to study programming. Maybe design something that helps people." Nicholas's lips curved. "Then you will. I'll make sure of it." Maya's heart swelled as she watched the exchange. This wasn't the ruthless CEO the city feared. This was a man who understood responsibility, who saw her brother's potential and wanted to nurture it. And for the first time, she let herself believe they might actually have a future. Weeks later, Nicholas surprised Maya in a way she never expected. It was late, and she entered his office as usual, mop in hand. But when she looked around, the room was spotless. Confused, she turned to Nicholas. "There's nothing to clean." Nicholas stood by his desk, the locket gleaming in his hand. "That's because tonight, you're not here to work. You're here because I asked you to be." Her breath caught as he stepped forward, eyes steady. "I've spent years building this empire, Maya. But you taught me something no one else ever could, that power means nothing without love, without someone to share it with. You are the reason I want to be more than the man everyone fears. You are the reason I want to be better." He dropped to one knee, the city lights glinting behind him. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. Nicholas held out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing flashy, just sincere. "Maya Brooks," he said, his voice thick. "I don't just want you in my office at night. I want you in my life. Always. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision. For a moment, the world spun, the weight of every struggle she'd carried pressing down. And then, like a flood breaking, hope surged. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, firmer, "Yes." Nicholas slipped the ring onto her finger, rising to kiss her as the city glittered around them. Months later, the same newspapers that had mocked her now plastered headlines about the unlikely love story of Nicholas Hayes and Maya Brooks. Whispers of scandal turned into whispers of admiration. And while the world gossiped, Nicholas and Maya built something stronger, a home filled with laughter, with David's bright future unfolding, with love that refused to be broken. One night, as they sat together in Nicholas's office, no longer as CEO and cleaning lady, but as partners, Nicholas reached for the locket resting on the desk. "This," he said, placing it in her hand, "was the last piece of my past. But you, Maya, you are my future." Maya smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then let's build it together." And as he kissed her hand, the locket glinting in the light, Nicholas Hayes knew the truth. It hadn't been the empire he built that saved him. It had been her. Family, before we close this story, just as Nicholas found love in the most unexpected place, I pray something good finds you too. Tell me in the comments, do you believe small acts of kindness can change lives forever? And don't forget to subscribe. Join our family for more emotional, heartwarming stories every week. Nicholas Hayes had once ruled his world with steel and solitude. But in the end, it was Maya Brooks's quiet kindness that conquered him, and together, they built a love that no empire could ever rival. Just as Nicholas and Maya found love in the most unexpected way, I pray over you right now, may your week be filled with unexpected blessings. May doors open that you thought were closed. May joy find its way into your home, and may every burden you're carrying become lighter. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Do you believe true love can be found in the most unlikely places? Your words matter to us, and we love hearing your thoughts. And don't forget, subscribe, like, and share this video. We'll be bringing you more emotional and heartwarming stories every week. Stories that remind us all that kindness, hope, and love can change lives forever. From our family to yours, stay blessed, stay strong, and never stop believing in the power of love.